Hello and welcome to Just a Tiny Amount, your channel for all things stop motion. I'm Gordon Craig and the gorilla has spoken. If you've not seen it yet, or you have no idea what I'm talking about, you can check out this video here. This project was not without its complications, so I thought I'd share with you some of the things that I've noted down, so that you too can learn from my mistakes. I say mistakes, but they're more like less successful decisions. The first thing I noted is that resin has a shelf life. If you're only making batches of small components, a 1 litre resin kit can last you quite a while. The stuff that I made most of my mouthpieces from could quite easily be over 2 years old. I didn't think this was a problem, as the castings came out fine. It was only when I tried to paint them that I noticed something was wrong. Some parts of the older resin just refused to take a coat of paint. It would seep this sticky ooze and then the paint would inevitably flake off. The mouthpieces made with fresh resin took paint just fine, so it was something bizarre about the older stuff. I suppose technically I should have made all of the pieces again using some new stuff, but I didn't have time for that, so I just persisted and slapped on increasingly thicker layers of paint using a brush, until eventually enough stuck. I don't know how long these pieces will last, but they got through filming, which is all I needed. So yes, tip number 1. Use fresh resin. The second thing that I've noted down is that fur adds thickness. I knew that I wanted to keep the amount of material around the joints quite thin so that they could bend easy. When I was shaping the foam on top of the armature, I made sure to cut it quite thin in these areas. Likewise, when I was adding fur to the body, I cut this quite short around the shoulders and elbows. The annoying thing about this is that it revealed the white backing material that the fur is attached to. I needed to colour this in with a Sharpie to stop it showing up on camera. Even with short fur on top of thin foam, the limbs were still slightly restricted in their movements. This wasn't too bad for the scenes that I had planned for this puppet, but might cause difficulties with more dynamic shots. There are other ways to add fur to a puppet. On the Isle of Dogs featurette, they showed how they pushed in each individual strand into the skin. I don't have time for that. I guess the point here to note is that fur adds a lot of complications to a puppet, thickness being one of them. My third point of note is that balsa wood is not particularly durable. I made a balsa wood skull for the head to keep it light, and that worked fine. The trouble came with the balsa plate that I made to keep the mouthpieces in the same position. This started off fine, but after repeatedly adding and removing mouths, small shards of balsa wood kept falling off. To begin with, this didn't seem to make much difference, but then I noticed that I was able to seat the mouths in slightly different orientations, which is what I wanted to avoid. If I were to do this again, I'd probably make that mouth plate out of something like resin or milliput or Sculpey, anything that could take a little bit of abuse and hold its shape. I suppose my tip for you then is, balsa wood is a great material for making puppets, but should be reserved for the internal parts, nothing that's going to take any abuse. Point number 4 is that painting perfect circles on eyeballs can get fiddly. You can buy ready-made eyeballs to use in your puppets that look fantastic, but I like making them myself. To do this I use small glass beads, which I then paint on the irises and pupils. I have tried numerous ways of getting a perfect circle, from masking it off to dipping it in puddles. Nothing seems to work very well. What I did this time with reasonable success was to sand flat the area of the eyeball that I was going to paint. This created a nice flat, round surface, which was a good guide when it came to painting. I started off by using acrylic paints, which I covered in resin as a protective layer. The acrylic paint didn't stick at all well to the glass bead and scraped off the moment you touched it. However, enamel paint performed much better. So that would be my tip for you. If you're painting glass beads, sand them flat and then use enamel paint. All in all, I'm really pleased with how this project has gone. Animating the gorilla was great fun. Here's a clip of it. I do intend to make the gorilla speak again, but that is for a future video. Until then, this is just a tiny amount. I'm Gordon Craig, and I shall see you next week.